Okay, so this is lab 4, and we will be installing the View client. So again, make sure that when you're logging into the environment, you're logging in to an environment that is acceptable for Lab 4 Plus. Their labs 1 through 3 can be done on the initial environment, but then there's a second set of pods that are made available for labs 4 and above. You need to make sure that you're logging into that specific pod, and it should say lab 4 or lab 4 plus on it. Once we get logged in, we open up our documentation, so let's follow along with that to make sure we're doing everything exactly how the document says. Of course, I'll call out some of the differences or some of the things you may see slightly different, because again, we are using Windows 7 now instead of Windows XP. That's the big difference here. So I'm going to go ahead and log into the student machine, which actually I already have. It's right there. Okay, we're going to log in as trainee, same credentials as before. And once we have this up and running, we're going to go ahead and log into the vSphere client with the administrator account. By default, you should be looking at the hosts and clusters view, which looks like this right here. If for some reason you, they want you in VMs and templates actually. In reality, it'll work both ways, but let's follow documentation. So you can actually just hit Control-Shift-V, or you can go up here and choose VMs and templates. Open this up, and you'll be looking at something like this. We didn't, so in the documentation you're going to see there's a DT template, but don't worry about that. We don't need that right now. The other thing that I'm noticing here, I thought I had resolved this, but we're still having a little bit of an issue, is you notice that the VMV CLA did not start. That should start automatically. So you can go ahead and right click on it right now and just do power on. That should have started automatically. And just as a little bonus for you here, I'll share with you how you can make that thing start automatically from here on forward. Again, I did this and I don't know why it didn't take for the lab, but again, you can pause your brain right now if you don't want to be confused by this, but just so you know, if you want this to be able to start automatically every time, you can go back to host and clusters, click on ESXi train, go to configuration, scroll down to machine startup shutdown, and then you're going to want to go over here, click on properties, grab this VMV CLA, see it's down here under manual, and you're going to want to move that up into the automatic start section. So you're going to probably have to move up twice to put it up in here. Tell it OK, and now it'll start up automatically next time you launch this this environment. And so these are persistent machines, and that should stick. It should have stuck because in the master pod that I cloned this from, that's how it's configured, but I don't know why it didn't stick. Nonetheless, you can do that, or if you just want to ignore that, you can always just kind of right-click and go to power on. All right, in any event, back to the documentation, we're going to install the View client, and we're going to install it on this VMV CLA. So we're going to right-click on VMV CLA and go to Open Console. And you may get an error message because sometimes that happens. If you do, just try again. Okay, and then we're going to log in. With our favorite password. I can remember it. Okay. Then we're going to browse out to that share vmv-ad shares. We're going to go down into the VMware folder. It may prompt you for credentials, it may not. And okay, here's another one of those differences. It differs slightly as far as the path itself. We're not doing VMware View Client 5.1. we are going to do the VMware Horizon client, x86 3.5.2. Go ahead and accept that. You may or may not be prompted for credentials to launch and install. Click next and go ahead and accept the agreement, and next. We're going to go IPv4. We can keep all these defaults. The default connection server is going to be vmv-cs.train.local. Next, we'll leave those as defaults and install. And we're all set and done. It'll say, do you want to restart? Technically you should restart right here at this point. I'm going to say go ahead and click restart to make sure everything works properly. In reality, you can get away without restarting. So I'm going to say no, just so we can keep this demo moving forward. And then also you'll notice in the lab documentation that it tells you to don't click anything. We have to disable the firewall first. I'm actually not exactly sure where that's coming from. Maybe there's something funky in Windows XP that I don't remember, but this will work just fine without disabling the firewall. So you can go ahead and skip forward at this point. We're going to bypass steps 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21, and we're going to move straight on to task 2. So it's been installed. Now we can go ahead and launch our View Horizon client. We'll see that the VMV-CS train local, that's the default connection server. That's already been, we put that in when we actually installed the client. If you wanted to add a new server, you could do that right here if you had another connection server. Let's go ahead and double click that guy. It'll reach out and connect. It'll probably be prompted for the certificate, and so this is like step 4 here. It's telling you to go ahead and allow the connection. So you can just click continue, or we can go through this entire thing. But for the sake of this, we'll just do continue. And then it's going to prompt you for your credentials. So if we look at the lab documentation again, it's telling us to use view user A with our favorite password. And then you'll see our 2 machines we have there. Now again, it looks slightly different than what we're looking at in the documentation. That's because, again, this is Windows 7 and it's also a different view client. Primarily it looks different because it's a different view client. So we're going to go ahead and click on which one does it tell us to connect to first. Payroll XP. So go ahead and double click on Payroll XP and it should log us in. Voila. You'll see the menu bar at the top here where we can, of course, because we're using non-licensed copies, we're going to get all kinds of warning messages. But you can send Control Delete. When you get to this part right here, this is exactly like it says. Do you want to allow you to share files between the remote desktop, in this case client A, and this virtual desktop here? So in the future, that's kind of your choice. It's kind of nice sometimes, but for security reasons, you may want to disable that. Again, different discussion there. You can connect USB devices here. You can send your Control Delete if you had the prompt there for credentials. And as far as this lab goes, that's it. Does it want us to do it again with the other machine? I don't think so. So I guess you're done. At this point, it tells us to go. Looks slightly different. Let's go to options. Sorry, we'll go to options, and we'll do, what does it say? Disconnect and log off. Okay. So let's do that. Disconnect and log off. And you'll notice that what happened there is when we launched that, it went full screen, and it took over the entire CLA desktop. You can actually minimize that if you want. You can have the 2 separate screens. But that's task 2. Now it wants us to go in and clone a machine, create another virtual machine. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's minimize this. Actually, I guess we're going to close that altogether. We're going to go back to our vSphere client, and I think it wanted us to power it down. Just technically doesn't really matter, but let's just follow the instructions. If it's already powered on, make sure you go and power down. So we'll go to power, and we'll do shut down guest. So you can just do power off, but that's a little rough for the machine. So we're going to go shut down guest. Make sure you want to shut it down. Yes. Do that. Wait a moment until that little green refreshes and goes away. Okay, it looks like that now, so we know it's powered off. We're going to right-click on this guy and go to clone. And we're going to walk through the process of cloning it. And we're going to call it VMV underscore CLB. Have it in the training data center. On that host. We'll put it in desktops. And under storage, we're going to make sure that it's thin provisioned. We want to make sure that it's on the data store. Click next. I'm going to customize. And so notice this, I modified this as well here. This is a Windows 7 machine, as you previously saw, but just to kind of keep in line with the documentation, and as to not confuse it with this Windows 7 customization, we're going to pick the Windows XP customization specification. Notice in the description I put it's actually a Windows 7 customization, but if you want to expand this, you can see the lab documents say Windows XP, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to go with this one. Choose the Windows XP. Next, finish, and then it will clone, and then we can shut things down. So that gives us another machine that we're going to use later, another client. I believe that's because later on the documentation, what it has us do is open up client A and client B, and then we connect to two different sessions to, I think it's the same machine, but that's a different lab. So we're done with lab 4 at this point. Hopefully that was successful, or is successful for everyone. I'm just going to hang out and let this thing finish up. If you're, I wouldn't close out the machine right now. I would just wait. It shouldn't take that long. I would let this finish. If you click I'm done, again, remember that's like it's going to pull the power cord out of the machine, and that cloning process won't complete. So there you go. The cloning process is complete. If I open up this resource pool desktops, you'll see that I have VMV CLB in there. And that's lab 4.